My name is David Stouck, and I've published a book about Arthur Erickson. When my wife and I first went out to work at Simon Fraser in 1965, we were struck at once by what a dramatic building Simon Fraser University was, rising sort of naturally out of its setting on top of a mountain. Years later, I met Arthur Erickson and interviewed him for a project, nothing to do with architecture. But I was struck again by something so unusual, and that was, in this case, his ability to speak in what seemed like fully formed, fully crafted sentences. And some years later again, when Arthur Erickson was quite elderly, one of his longtime friends, Amy Buckerfield White, contacted me and said, "Have you ever thought of writing a biography of Arthur Erickson?" And the reason she did this is because I'd written a biography of her aunt, Ethel Wilson. And although I indeed had never thought of writing about architecture since I had been a literary biographer, I was nonetheless intrigued. And eventually I met with Arthur, and he agreed that he would be cooperative, shall we say, and so that's how this biography came to be written. What surprised me about my research here was that I had probably taken off a lot more than I could chew. Not only was I in a steep learning curve in terms of having to master the language of architecture to write this biography, but I had to learn about poetry and music and religious philosophy, politics, landscaping. It was an enormous amount, and of course his cultural travels. There was an enormous amount of material to cover. Probably his most celebrated project is Simon Fraser University, because of the ideas that went into that building, particularly the idea that education belongs to everyone, that knowledge belongs to everyone. It's the impulse in the design of that university is what you could call democratic, if not utopian. It's designed with its malls and squares to bring people together and to break down all the separation, the divisions between forms of knowledge. And this led, of course, his goal was that all knowledge should be interdisciplinary. His other building, of course, which is remarkable, at least critics would say, is most remarkable, is the Museum of Anthropology at the University of British Columbia. Not only is it a handsome building which evokes the cultural possibilities of ancient, the usable possibilities of ancient cultures. The Tory in Japan, the First Nations, the horizontals of First Nations design. But it's a building which also, again, gives the individual, empowers the individual to do research. It has an open storage system wherein you can go and find what you want without, the whole collection is there, and you don't have to wait for a curator to select what you see. So these are two remarkable buildings for sure. Arthur Erickson is known as a green architect. That is to say, he's one of the first to make the setting, the landscape, an important part of any of his building sites. In the 1950s, friends asked him if he would design them a cabin, and he did. But he surprised them and quite a few of their friends by putting a sod roof on the top. Here in Ontario, he built a house out near the Grand River. It's going down the hillside and on 4 levels. And it's glass and brick and beams. But on the top, the roof is made of sod. The people who bought the house, or commissioned the house rather, were rather surprised. But they found themselves using that place to grow their vegetables. This was back in 1974. More and more, he kept making green buildings. The center of Vancouver's Robson Square is occupied by a kind of a garden raised up in the air that creates a park, an elevated park in the center of Vancouver. So this was at the very heart of his, always at the heart of his architecture. The landscape is as important as the building.